did not learn to read in school. How did you learn to read?
I remember when I first learned how to read, it started with what were those? There was some books that we used to.
It was the Bob books or
yeah,
something.
that's what it was. So I started with those, and it was just like kind of on my own usually, just kind of trying to read them, and some with the parents' help. And then I remember it just kind of like at some point just kind of clicked. Like I was just trying to read on my own as much as I could, and then I picked up like Magic Treehouse was the first books that I read, and I picked up one, and I was like, I can read this. Like I don't really remember what the whole process was, honestly. It was just kind of like I struggled with it for a while, and all of a sudden I was just like read the whole book, and then I just read all of them. You know, like it just sort of happened. So for me, it was the biggest part of it was just sitting down and doing it, and having some guidance and stuff, but having those very simplified books that are designed for that was just like, and then just having the resources to just pick up a book and have my own time to work on it and to try to understand it and try to put the story together on my own. Yeah.
And to be read to aloud, like
Okay, yeah.
so much, like that was such a huge part of our lives.
Yeah.
The vocabulary and the experience and being read to.
So yeah, that was my learning experience.
Alice?
Yeah.
And how old were you?
I honestly don't remember exactly. I think I feel like it was like 7 by the time I could like fluently read books.
Yeah, you were a little bit before your brother, so yeah, okay,
Yeah,
all right.
Yeah.
I'm so excited about reading. I was a certified, elementary school teacher, K through 8, and like, how are we going to teach first graders to read? We're driving down the road, and the boys are like, can we play that ABC game? What does that say? What does that say? What does this say? Mommy, what does this say? So it's just like swimming. You just learn it. It's just such a natural process for most kids. I mean, we need to help guide them, but it really is a lot like swimming. It's like get in the water, you're experiencing it, you're learning just by seeing the words and being told, and
A brag about my brother a little bit more. He was always precocious, so I will say he learned how to read at the age of 3, because he really liked to read maps, because there was another dimension to them aside from just words, but also pictures. And I was on a different spectrum. I probably learned at like 5-ish, maybe earlier. I'm not sure. I was very into comic books. I read Harvey comics. So like Casper, like the super old ones that probably like my parents grew up with, like Wendy the Friendly Little Witch, and then like moved into more current comic books like Garfield and Zitz, and I read the comics in the newspaper when parents got newspapers. And we have a chalkboard in my house, and there would always be like a word of the day where my parents would try and get me to spell it. So they just put like a word like elephant. And like by the end of the day, they were like, "Do you know how to spell it?" And we're like, "Nah." And they'd be like, "Okay." I'm still god awful at spelling. Thank God for spell check. But as far as reading goes, this is embarrassing. Well, not really. I love Harry Potter. And to this day, every single night when I go to sleep, I listen to Jim Dale on audiobook. And I did growing up, and I still do. And it's like sort of embarrassing, but like, come on, it's great. So yeah, audiobooks. I grew up with a lot of them, and there's all those just like, I don't know. Reading is not it's super important, but I think as far as you need to learn it at some point, and the sooner you do, the more you can explore as far as this. I mean, you can't understand everything that's been written unless you know how to read, but there's so much other stuff to explore that like there's no huge rush.
It turns out that there's a fair amount of literature on people who learn to read outside of school experience. So sometimes we're talking about what we call precocious readers, people who learn before school age. Sometimes we're talking about people who are unschoolers, how do they do it? There's a fair amount of literature, there's some studies on this. Number one, there is no single age at which people do it. That's kind of a myth that we've created through school. Like if you create a system where you learn to read in first grade, everyone's going to freak out. Oh my God, my kid passed first grade, they're not learning to read. But that's kind of because school tells us that, and there's really no basis for it. The second thing is there's no one way that it happens. Some kids do it through like the osmosis process that you're talking about, where you're read to and probably like subconsciously you're linking up the word with the other kids learn through like discovering kind of like phonics. Oh, that's A, and people say when there's A, so okay. Other people learn through a really deliberate process. Some people it's just kind of natural. I mean, those are the really two big rules. It's not a science. We constructed a science around it, but honestly, that's because school tells us that there's a science to it.